All right, here we go. Post-show hangout. So we had a little bit of a show that had to do with, oh, I forgot to do this here. That had to do with science and religion and its compatibility. So I'm curious to know, gentlemen, what your take is on that question. I pressed Christian IG for his take on it, and I just sent him the link for this, so maybe he'll stop in and he'll be able to defend his stance on it. I didn't get a chance to talk about my stance on it, but I do believe that they are compatible to a point, but I do think that there is I don't think that they are non-overlapping magisteria, as Stephen Jay Gould would say. I think that they not only butt up against each other. Oh, hold on one second. I'm hearing echo of myself. And I think that there is a point where they overlap. For instance, claims of prayer having an effect on anything. I think that is a gross overstepping of religion, saying that it can do something on the natural world that can obviously be measured and tested, and that's something that science can do, and has been shown time and time again that prayer has no effect. You know, signal detection theory has laid out a very clear way to determine when there are hits, misses, false alarms, and correct rejections, and using that method, there's nothing to be seen. Nothing. Move on. Nothing to be seen here. So I think that, you know, for a large percentage of the cases, that they can be compatible. You know, they don't rub against each other too much of the time. But in the cases where they do rub up against each other, science wins. So that's my take on it. How do you feel about it, Alex?
Good science, I would say yes. I think that I'd like to maybe get a baseline on how we're defining religion, because were we sticking with standard, typical, or just the like established religions?
I'm actually comfortable using a looser
behavior.
I'm more comfortable using a looser definition for religion than I am for science. I'm comfortable using like belief in God, belief in an intelligent designer, as a substitute for religion, being theistic.
What about pseudoscience? What about that?
What about pseudoscience? Using that as a substitute for science, or as a substitute for religion?
A substitute for religion.
Can pseudoscience and science be compatible?
Well, no.
You're blowing my mind.
I'm gonna put obviously pseudoscience with the religion umbrella, to say that people would believe things that aren't necessarily provable by science, but there's an attempt to make them sort of hand in hand, in the same way that, you know, maybe religion would piggyback on some scientific ideas and testing.
So what would you call that, Dr. Shook? Like non-skeptics? Like a blanket term for non-skeptics?
Gullible, perhaps. People who enjoy mystery and people who enjoy
woo,
you know, speculative ideas that we don't know how to test yet. That's part of, you know, how the brain works. Curiosity is cool. I don't find anything, you know, against you know, how the brain should normally work, but we should also know, you know, when the brain's gone too far, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. And so, Alex, in including that in the religious, what does that do?
I'm trying to think of a behavior as opposed to what. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. It's more about the religious behavior as opposed to it just being a religion. That is, let's say they'll believe in the attempt, let's say you have paranormal phenomenon, let's say you have ghosts, and that's clearly something that's not, testable, but there will try to mesh in with science. There are, what are they, electromagnetic readers, and it's there's no divide there. I mean, it's obviously not good data, but or provable data, but there is that meshing between both of them.
Between pseudoscience and science?
Yes, it's not like they wouldn't people on the other side wouldn't want to. It's not one or the other. I mean, sometimes they'll bleed into each other, is what I'm saying. It's not like your religion, you'll reject science completely. It's not that you believe in some kind of paranormal thing that you reject science completely. I think people will still use science, whether it's scientific approaches, whether it's good or bad. They'll still use those mechanisms. So it's not like it's one or the other is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So religion will, what you're saying is, religion doesn't always reject science. Sometimes it'll accept science, but sometimes the science that it'll accept is pseudoscience.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm also trying to broaden the term of religion to any kind of unprovable thing that's still making some kind of headway or still has some kind of popularity or following or groups that will advocate it.
Sure. So Ayurvedic medicine can be said to be like a science, right? And that's kind of based in religious foundations in the Middle East, right, or in India. And traditional Chinese medicine can be said to be kind of a science, and that has like some kind of mystic and religious roots in China.
Something like chiropractic medicine as well, and that's very popular, or at least it's very popular in the West and sort of accepted.
But still, woo.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that there's a correlation between belief in things like the things that people who believe in religions believe, and believing in the things like the people who believe in woo believe?
I think there's no escaping science, no matter what paranormal, supernatural position you're in, whether it's religion or it's pseudoscience. They'll always realize, that's what people want to hear, that's what people want to see, is that we have a tie-in with science. We're not just saying anything for anything.
But what about real science? So let's leave pseudoscience off the table. Can religion, as you're explaining it, and real science, using naturalistic methodology, can they be compatible? So, like, people claiming to use Eastern medicine, people claiming to use Ayurvedic medicine, people claiming to use chiropractic, people claiming to use whatever, e-readers, e-meters for auditing, or whatever version of fringe science that they're claiming to use out of the picture. Can religion and science be compatible? Alex, go.
I can't give an answer yet because I might go back and forth on that one. There's some things that I was going to say that, the closer we realize things using science, the further up in the sky God gets. But I think some religions are realizing that a lot of scientific, discoveries or methods can work in their religion. I mean, some people. And I have an echo.
I'm hearing an echo from you, Dr. Shook.
Yeah, I think it's.
Did your earplugs become unplugged?
Is that better?
Test. No.
No, it's coming right from you. I'm gonna have to mute your mic.
I have no idea why.
It might be Google Plus. Check, one, two. No, it's still happening. Could you do me a favor and mute your mic? It won't. There it is. It went away for no reason.
No, he's muted. That's fine.
Oh, okay.
I think it's becoming more compatible. I think they're becoming more compatible. I think people are realizing that, like I said, there's some things that they can't win with, and maybe some things, prayer, for example, we've tested it, but maybe we don't have the right testing mechanism for it. Maybe, you're not testing some kind of chemical or physical reaction. You're testing a being with a will. So, testing him wouldn't really work out because he's the one who ultimately decides if he's going to answer a prayer or not and to what ends. So there's some things that, I can't agree with, and some things that I do think that religion is accepting science more and more.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Ozzy? What's your take on this?
Well, I would take the negative view. I don't think they're compatible, but I want to qualify what I mean by that. I mean, obviously, you can be religious and you can be a scientist. These are sort of ways of understanding reality that can be. I'm getting some feedback here.
It's from you.
It's from me. Okay, it seems to have gone. All right.
I think it's the Google gods.
It's the Google gods. Okay. Yeah. What I mean to say is, a person can be religious and a scientist. We've got all kinds of people like that. We've got fine examples of fine scientific minds who are very religious. People like Francis Collins, for instance. So there's no incompatibility in that sense, and there's no incompatibility in the sense that the principles of religion preclude when doing science and vice versa. The problem is that I don't think that there is any proper domain of religion. That is, that there is no domain of knowledge that that religions can actually claim to have. As far as I can tell, every question that we can ask is either properly in the domain and province of science or potentially within the domain of science, including questions of values and morality. Although obviously we don't have sciences of values and morality yet, but we might sort of creep our way in that direction slowly. My hunch is that we are in fact working towards that as we speak. But I don't think that there is. I don't believe that anything like Stephen Jay Gould believed about there's a domain of science, of questions that are scientific questions, there's a domain of types of questions that are the proper province of religion. I just don't see that any religion is in fact able to answer to anybody's satisfaction the questions that they say that they can answer. And so I think that they're incompatible in the sense that religion doesn't in fact have a domain of knowledge that properly belongs to itself, and as such, when they're answering questions that will admit of answers, they're traipsing all over the realm of science, and by science I mean science broadly construed. That would include things like history and archaeology and sociology and psychology, and not just the natural, the hard sciences.
Maute, you're muted. I can't hear you.
How's that?
Chris, that's better.
All right, Dr. Shook.
Hey,
Are you muted?
Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
All right. I figured out the problem and solved it on my end. Oh, I was nodding in agreement about religion and science being incompatible. It seems to me that when science is science and religion is religion, they have to be incompatible. Trying to change religion to become compatible with science isn't a job of religion. That's called theology. It's not the only thing done under the name of theology, but it is one of the provinces of theology. Trying to figure out how science could become compatible with religion is called philosophy. Well, most of philosophy doesn't do that, but when that is attempted, that's a philosophical attempt. So philosophy and theology can get in dialogue with each other, to try to figure out how the two could be compatible, maybe integrated, partnered, even synthesized into one master worldview. But that effort, though intellectually fascinating, is neither science nor religion. And I'll just say another word why that is. You have to look on religion's side. Religion fundamentally depends upon ideas about entities, beings, forces, powers that strangely combine in an unnatural way things that ordinarily would not be expected. So we know that religion, of course, is far older than science. So religion has never depended on science. Religion does, however, depend on sort of the natural ontological categories, the basic furniture of the world that we teach to 4-year-olds. So by the time somebody's 4 years old, they know the difference between a rock and a plant and a cat and their sister, right? So we have these basic categories of inanimate things, growing things, moving and sentient animals, and then finally persons. And at that point, religious categories can start kicking in because they combine things that ordinarily would not be found naturally. So they talk about rocks that have powers to influence people, or they talk about people that can fly, or invisible animals that can talk, invisible human beings that can have powers the size of mountains, etc., etc., etc. And all of that sort of category mixing creates concepts of the unnatural. So in a sense, religion depends on the natural because you need sort of natural basic categories to then play with, to mix up, to go beyond the boundaries of. So religion depends upon the paranormal, the unnatural in some sense. Ideas about these things, right? Science goes beyond natural categories, but not by mixing them. Persons are still persons after science is done with them. But, of course, we find out sort of the how they go. So, for example, when quantum phenomenon, sort of like wave-particle duality, was discovered, scientists didn't announce that they've discovered paranormal activity, right? There were no paranormal phenomenon going on inside physics labs. New phenomenon, but of course they ultimately ended up being explained in terms of, categories that connect with the rest of the world. The point of religious concepts and categories is that they don't line up. They don't easily connect with the natural world. That's what makes them absolutely fascinating and interesting and great for storytelling and mythologizing.
Nice. Excuse me. I'm enjoying some cashews.
May I pick up on what Dr. Shook said then while you're chewing, or?
No, you may not, Ozzy.
Okay.
It's not your turn.
Okay, you're right.
Totally
it's not.
Kidding.
No.
I'm totally kidding. I would love for you to pick up where Dr. Shook left off.
Okay. I know. I forgot that IG had entered the room there, and that it's not my turn.
Well, no. If you have something that's pertinent to what he just said, I would love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Shook was talking about sort of new phenomena that get discovered, and of course, whenever that happens, scientists don't say, "Oh, we've discovered the paranormal." Anything that is recognized as a fact, even if it's mysterious and unexplained, even if it's uncanny, simply falls under some existing chapter of science, or potentially becomes a new chapter of science within the sort of the larger corpus of human discoveries and inquiry. We don't ever say, right, of course. I mean, if we discovered ESP was real, if we discovered the telekinetic phenomena were actually happening, even if we had no explanation, we had no models for explaining it, we wouldn't deny the phenomena. We would just say, okay, the phenomena are there. There's mysteries all over science. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that it doesn't matter how uncanny the phenomena are. I mean, if you look at relativistic phenomena, quantum mechanical phenomena, I mean, these things are as weird and counterintuitive and seemingly even contrary to logic at times, and still science doesn't shy away from them. And I raise this because it's so common to hear people who are religious say, no, no, we have lots of religious concepts that make perfect sense, but they are inexplicable by the means of science. Science can't explain them, and therefore science rejects the facts in question. And I think that is false to fact. Science does not do that. When we have the data, when we can demonstrate an effect or phenomenon, even when we have no model to explain it, we don't deny it. We don't run from it. It just becomes a mystery, and everybody in the field who isn't busy on something else immediately rushes in to try to study this new phenomenon because they all want to be first to explain it.
But every time we solve a mystery, you know what we find? More nature.
Well, that's true, but I wouldn't want to be mistaken as suggesting that therefore anything that we would find would have to be simply part of nature. I think that if the Greek gods materialized and started demonstrating and manifesting magical powers, we might be convinced that there's another kind of realm of fact out there, and we wouldn't just say, "Oh, well, these are natural beings." I'm sorry?
I stole that line from Dr. Shook.
Okay.
One of the interesting things, and I think I've mentioned this before, but just a quick comment, but one of the interesting things that I've heard from a comic book that I read, or a comic book definition of magic, is that it's not something that's supernatural. They're borrowing physics or products from another dimension, let's say. It's still something natural. It's a natural explanation for something. I thought, despite the fact that science has ruined comic books and superpowers for me forever, I think that that's one of the interesting concepts of magic. Because when something does happen, and we discover what it is, it comes from supernatural and enters the realm of natural. Religion seems to be stuck on the God of the Gaps kind of idea.
But that just seems like a clever reframing of it. That just seems like a really super clever semantic trick, like saying wishes are unicorn farts. I just happen to like thinking of it that way. Like magic is just physics from another dimension.
Thank you.
It is in obviously. First of all, I'm talking about comic books. I'm talking about comic books.
Extraordinary.
Okay, in comic books, you'll have magic as altering probabilities. You'll have magic as some kind of natural phenomenon.
Alex, you do not have to dig your heels in and defend comic books. I love comic books.
But the idea is that in this sense is that it's not something supernatural. It's way out to lunch in terms of a thing, but it is something that's natural.
But that's a claim. That's just a claim. It doesn't mean anybody knows anything, though, right? I can say, unicorns are natural. That neither proves unicorns exist, nor that nature has to admit them, right?
I'm not bringing this as an argument. I'm not suggesting this at all. I was kind of going over a couple of things that were mentioned. The general idea is that things that we think are supernatural, once they come in, we won't, turn tail and run away from them. They just enter. They come from the world of supernatural, and once we figure out a model for it, it enters the world of natural, or it is. We define it as something that's natural. I just thought it was. Yeah, I'm not bringing this up and saying unicorn farts, and I'm gonna cry now.
You were shoehorning the idea that as soon as something supernatural gets explained by science, it becomes natural, and you were using that idea as a springboard for it?
Sort of, but I guess I did that poorly.
Well, can I jump in and help out Alex here? I have just a twist that maybe he wasn't quite reaching for, but I will, and see how it plays with you folks. I think actually the supernatural just doesn't show up and we say, oh, that's supernatural. I think conceptions of the supernatural, again, to repeat a point I made earlier, depend on us already having some conceptions of the natural so that the supernatural can stand out in contrast. So, for example, nobody just points at something absolutely brand new that's completely mysterious and says, ah, that's supernatural. They don't do that because they don't have any freaking clue either what they're, what it is. It's just mystery, and mystery's cool. Usually you get people saying, well, that's supernatural, after they're convinced that natural explanations, scientific explanations, must be inadequate, at least for now, maybe forever. So then they take the free ride. They try to get the free lunch. They say, ah, well, not only is it mysterious, science can't explain it with its categories, so we're going to come up with some new categories, our supernatural categories. And that's going to be our explanation. Now, of course, they can call it an explanation, but they, number one, haven't explained a gosh darn thing. Number two, they're counting on science never explaining it, and I think it's foolish to bet against science in the long run.
In the long run. In the short run, science makes mistakes and is fallible.
I would say that, I mean, from my point of view, I think that the universe is knowable. I think that science has the capability of understanding everything that we observe. I would never say that that we do not have the ability or the capacity to understand. And whether we'll understand sooner rather than later, I mean, I don't know. But
so
what I would say,
if nature is knowable and God is knowable, does that make God part of nature?
I say yes. Well, I was having this discussion with Chris,
Oh, cool.
and
Okay.
I say yes. That God is part of nature. By definition, He must be. If He exists or has the ability to exist within nature, then He must be a part of it.
That's refreshing to hear, I have to say, because the word supernatural is so often used as an honorific term, and
right.
if anyone were to suggest that God was natural, a lot of people would just really get upset at the suggestion.
Yes, they would call that blasphemy, and I've been accused quite recently, matter of fact, as not being a real Christian because of
He's
ideas.
being attacked of it right now on the comment section. Right now.
What?
You're being attacked of being not a Christian on the comment section right now.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
For real?
because, oh yeah, because
Right.
because of the way that the way that I see God is vastly different than I would say the majority of Christians on YouTube, which is unfortunate, but nonetheless the truth. I would also go as far as to say that one of the things that bothers me the most about our species is that, according to science, we're about 200,000 to 240,000 years out of the trees, and we seem to think that we have this understanding. Well, we have a good enough understanding of our universe to say something does not exist. That's one of the things that really bothers me. Is it's one thing to say that I don't believe that this exists because I don't have evidence to support it, and I can respect that. But it's another to say that belief in it is preposterous, and belief in it cannot align with science. I would adamantly disagree. I think first of all we have to determine, what we're talking about, and from a position that God operates in nature and is a part of nature, I would not be someone who subscribes to God of the gaps because I believe that the universe is knowable and it's designed that way. It's designed to be knowable. Why would God give us the ability to conduct science if He didn't want us to understand the creation or the universe?
Do you think that the fear in that is that other people think that we're going to end up catching up to God and putting Him under a microscope, in a sense?
Well, maybe. I mean, I don't think that we. Well, I think an analogy I've used many times before is for a human being to completely understand God would be like trying to teach a dog how to build a house. I don't know that we have the cognitive ability to perceive and understand God accurately. I don't know. I'm not saying we
I would
can't. I'm saying
completely
I don't.
agree with that. That's
I'm
why I'm an
saying,
atheist.
and
I feel that way
I
about the
don't think.
universe.
Well,
well,
I don't know that we have the capacities to understand everything about the universe. I mean, it's been said that the universe isn't just weirder than we imagine; it might be weirder than we can imagine.
right.
And you don't even have to posit a God there. So, I don't think that we're not carving out a special epistemological status for God by saying that he might be beyond our understanding. There's no reason to be terribly confident that we're in an epistemic situation to understand everything about the universe.
Do you think that our intellectual faculties would evolve maybe to a point that one day we'd be able to do that?
Who are you asking?
Maute. Just because he's choking on cashews.
I hate you. I hate you to death. Ask the question again.
General question is, we're not able to understand the great mysteries of the universe right now, but I mean, maybe our intellectual faculties would evolve to a point that maybe we would. We're not, just stagnating as a species.
I don't know. I think that we would understand
my view would be
chunks of it.
It's a hypothetical as well. I mean, I'm not backing that up. But I think I'd say we underestimate our ancestors, but I mean, I think we possess more knowledge, and we just keep appending to that chunk of knowledge that we have, and we keep advancing.
Yeah, but the problem is whether or not there might be phenomena that are sufficiently weird enough that the kinds of brains that we have evolved, which didn't evolve to understand things that are happening at superluminal velocities and at infinitesimally small scales, that there's no reason to think that our brains are capable of modeling those sorts of things, and ever they might never be intuitive, and they might just be beyond our comprehension period. And I don't know that there's unless there's a selective pressure that's going to sort of push our brains along that direction. There might be a limit, and there might not be sort of ways that we can just keep ratcheting and leveraging the intellectual abstract tools of logic and reasoning and experimentation. We might not be able to sort of keep leveraging those up and up and up and up to get to where we need to go. It's an open question. I mean, maybe we have more than enough cognitive capacity to understand everything.
Yeah, well, I'm not even sure. I'm not sure to what extent our brains have evolved in that sense either. I don't know. So
this gets back to a basic question about how complex does the universe appear to be. If the universe seems to be always more mysteriously complex than even our instruments can measure. I mean, science gave up on our brains operating alone, 300 years ago. Right now, we don't theorize about what we can actually detect with our brains. We theorize about what machine technologies like, radar can detect. So, we've got a pretty good scan on the universe. So then the question is, are there signs of dramatic complexity above, beyond, our ability to even get any data from? And here, actually, things like cosmic background radiation, well, we can measure that, right? The basic fingerprints of the origin of our universe does not seem to be more complex than our instruments even now can handle. We wish for more precise instruments to get more precise data about cosmic background radiation. But there doesn't seem to be anything about it where we say, wow, we'll never invent an instrument that really gets at that. So it could be that what's basically going on with our universe is basic enough that either us or sort of our imaginably 1,000 years from now technologically improved could probably figure out everything basically that's going on within our visible universe. That's not beyond the realm of possibility. Religions, of course, always want to see sort of extra design that points at complexities that we could never possibly explain. And that's sort of religion's job. It's religion is trying to see kinds of things that surpass our best categorizing. Always the more. Well, you can think that you see signs, but that doesn't mean that the signs are really there. I'd trust science before I'd trust religion, I think.
Hey, can I take a break from what we're talking about right now to say something?
You just did.
Okay, good. Hey, just another zombie. If you're watching this right now, I'd like to get your attention. If you don't want to come on the show and talk to me or Christian IG, stop spamming the comments. Okay? I understand that it's your free speech, but if you don't have the balls to put your money where your mouth is and address what you want to address without the misunderstanding that can go with text messages, then don't bother. If you don't like what you're hearing, don't watch what we're putting out. So I extend an invitation to you to join this conversation. You seem to have a problem with the fact that I have on this hangout a certain person. His name is Christian IG.
Ta-da!
He's not representing anything other than himself. He has not at any point said that he represents Christianity. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me. Can anyone on this panel correct me in saying that Christian has said that he represents Christianity? Okay. So, that being the case, he's only representing his personal opinions. So, what he does in his personal time and what he has done in his personal history on YouTube is really nobody's concern. It doesn't concern me. It doesn't bother me. Okay? So, I'm going to let the other people in the comment section deal with you because they seem to be doing a very good job.
Can you, Chris, can you link the watch page over here in our chat?
Okay.
Because I have a feeling I know who it is.
Yeah, how do you see these comments? I'm new
they're
to
on the
Google
watch.
Chat.
Yeah, they're on the watch page.
I don't know what that is or what that means.
Okay.
I hope nobody said anything about my hair.
There. This is the watch page, the link. And you'll want to mute it as soon as it loads, otherwise, because we're on a delay. We're actually being broadcast on the New Covenant Group YouTube page.
Yes.
And
I'm with you.
People are watching on that page this broadcast, and they're commenting.
I see it now,
so
thanks.
to give some background on who I think this is, now I don't know who this is for sure, but I have a feeling, and when I read comments, I'll have a better idea.
And just to make it clear, Christian, just to make it clear, whoever it is, they don't have to show their face. They can put up a picture and just talk person to person with us.
This person would be identified by their voice.
I hear you.
I have recently made a rather vicious enemy and a user called Atheism Defended. His name is Raul. And recently he's been running around the internet saying that I'm not a real Christian. So, yeah, this is not a surprise to me. So anyhow, let's continue with this intellectual discussion because we don't need trolls dumbing down this room, which is exactly what they want.
I just wanted to address it person to person because I invited them to the hangout, and they choose to stay in the comment section.
Yeah, and I concur. I would love for this person to come on and ask me any question they'd like. I am open to any kind of criticism, any line of questioning. I've never been afraid of that, and I invite it, as a matter of fact.
Okay, very good. Just to make sure that we're all on the level, that transparency is the key. Moving on. So, Dr. Shook had just made a very good point about his views on science and religion, talking about the paranormal and supernatural. Who wanted to chime in? I'm sorry, I'm multitasking. Pick up the ball, someone.
It's not gonna be coherent as usual. I think maybe it depends on the definition of God or the religion that's being used. Maybe it's something I wanted to say earlier, but in terms of religion and science being compatible, if 99.99%, let's say for me, for example, I believed in a deity who created the universe, created the Big Bang, but everything else I believe from the natural realm, basically the only thing I believe is he's the one who lit that spark, for lack of better terms, for the Big Bang. That's all I believe. It's my religion. I believe that there is this deity who did that, but everything else, I'm 100% in the natural world, and I agree with everything in good science. Would that not be compatible with science? My religious views that there is a deaf, dumb, and blind deity who created the universe. But
probably not. Let me ask you a question, Alex. Do you think that this God caused the universe to come into exist? That's
yes,
your view?
it had
There's a causal relationship?
Yeah, it had. There was definitely agency.
So, do you think that causal relationship is anything remotely like, similar to, analogous to, extension of any cause you currently understand elsewhere in your life, the world, the natural universe? Is there some overlap, or is there a complete difference?
You're suggesting if it's something that was natural.
No. We haven't even. Slow down. We're not even getting to anything.
I think.
I'm just trying to understand your view. So don't get ahead of me.
The hypothetical view that
when you think of God causing the universe, and that word cause is sort of in your mind, right? Is that cause anything remotely similar to, analogous, like any other cause that you have seen anywhere else in your experience or in nature, in the environment? What's it like?
Specifically,
what comes to mind?
It's a unicorn who is expelling gas. That's the cause. Now, I've never seen a unicorn. But this one is that. But I've seen a fart.
So you think that God
in a gas chromatograph?
Yes. I felt the effects of a fart.
Do you see where this is going, Alex?
No, sorry, I missed out the last point because I was busy laughing.
I have a question. Would you guys consider the search for scientific evidence of ghosts or paranormal phenomenon a legitimate science?
It depends how it was done, how it was undertaken. The problem is that such investigations have gone on for a long time and never turned up anything, so people are not especially optimistic.
Worthy of a field of science?
Right. Is it worthy of a field in science? And because I'm extremely skeptical of what I've seen. And I wonder if...
Well, actually, your question, Christian, is a perfect segue to my failed attempt to trap Alex in a dilemma. So I'm going to try the same dilemma with you. I mean, science does not bother actually applying its methodology unless whatever mysterious thing, right, there is that you've got a curiosity about is somehow remotely similar to something you already kind of know how to get a grip on. You have to have some positive affirmative conception of the causal relationship, because if you don't have any, then investigation and inquiry and looking additionally into it is fruitless and hopeless, and you're not going to be doing anything. because you don't know what you're doing, literally. In order to apply science, you have to have things to rule out, meaning you have to have some positive conceptions, some hypotheses, and those things are all based upon, our accumulated experience with what we know does work. That's why, I tried to leave Alex in a trap, and he deftly avoided it. But I mean, the deal is, right, if you say no, my conception of the causal relationship between a God and the universe, or a ghost and a universe, is utterly nothing like anything that I've ever experienced, thought of, heard of, somebody told me about, science is used, agriculture is used, right? It's completely unlike anything any other human being has ever used as a cause. Then, of course, the trap closed, and your conception is empty. You aren't actually thinking about anything. You're just spewing words. You're using the word cause, and it's a noise. It's meaningless, and you've got nothing at all. On the other hand, if you pick the other horn of the dilemma, that in fact you really positively think that God causing something or a ghost causing something is similar to, analogous, like some other cause that we already understand, then we can empirically investigate it with our scientific and skeptical toolkit, and now we've got you. Because if we don't come up with anything, you've been disconfirmed. You've been falsified. Right. So in which case you had a conception of a cause, but you're wrong. Right. So that's the trap when you're talking about the paranormal or the religious. Either you're just either you're just using words that would appear to have meaning, but you don't really have any meaning behind them, or we can investigate them and show them to be empty of actual causal force. So either no causal meaning or no causal force, and I think that's the way you have to go with these things.
Okay. Yeah. I'm curious because there are a lot of people that make a lot of claims, and there are a lot of theories floating around, and I'm not convinced that this is that what's being observed or experienced can be directly related to a ghost of some sort or an act of God, if you will. I think it might be a legitimate phenomenon that we are misrepresenting because we don't understand what it is. We are assigning this label to it, like it's a ghost. But when, as a matter of fact, it might be some mechanism in nature that we just don't quite understand yet.
Or it could be a hallucination.
It could be a hallucination.
That's why you've got to inquire into these things. So, for example, someone claiming to see a ghost. Well, where's the photograph of it? And can the photograph be proven not to be a fake? Well, there aren't any photographs of ghosts that have stood up to scientific scrutiny and so forth. So you've got people seeing things, but there's no there.
Well, that's not entirely true. I have seen photo analysis by professionals who say that they cannot. What they can say is that this image wasn't edited, it wasn't doctored. Whatever was photographed was indeed there, but they wouldn't go as far as to identify what was photographed as a ghost.
Well, of course, because no one has the faintest positive conception of what a ghost would cause. Right. I mean, there's no there.
Now, there are no exemplars. There are no exemplars of these supernatural phenomena. That's the problem.
And I think it's just something we do, and we're trying to deny that we do it, but it's always, the ghost is always something that's bipedal, humanoid type of shape. If it's some random,
in every case, but yeah, I see.
But if there are some random blurs, either we look at that and say it's a random blur, but we also have a mechanism in our brain to identify faces in anything.
Yes.
The craters on the moon, you'll see a face. You'll see a face in every. I can look at the concrete block right next to me and find 40. It's a certain mechanism that we have that we look for patterns.
And for the record, I do not see the man in the moon when I look at the moon. Just for the record, I don't see it, and I've tried. But anyhow.
And that leads me.
Oh, go ahead, Alex.
That leads me to a story that happened, and I'm very skeptical about specifically the ghost things, especially in my area, which is supposed to be haunted. I was working late one night with a friend, and he told me, if ever somebody asks, you tell them the story. And we were, having a chat in the kitchen, and we heard rapping in the cabinets. And my first reaction hearing it is it had intent, it's obviously something, creaking, or maybe it was coming from another room, or, there was a physical reaction that caused it. But because it sounded so close to having intent to it, you automatically kind of double take. And you get mad at yourself. It's the same effect you have when you watch a scary movie and you can't sleep at night. You have a, fully skeptical, rational mind, but you're still afraid of the things in the dark. Please tell me that other people do this. No? Nobody gets scared in the... Okay.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, see, it's interesting that religion, of course, is precisely the sort of belief system that takes enormous advantage of people seeing things when they're alone, or a couple of people seeing something spooky but they can't find it again, or appearances that happen to a group of people but actually it was long ago, they're all dead now, and all we have are legends passed down, right? In other words, religion always makes sure, in some sense, that the most crucial phenomenon verifying religious claims are never reproducible. They're never detectable by any normal means. They're not controllable except by, high priest magicians or tricksters, and you can't figure out what the hell they're doing either, right? So religion takes advantage of our cognitive biases at our most vulnerable points. Mm-hmm. Which tells you an awful lot about religion, and it kind of returns us to our original point, why science and religion have to be incompatible, because the methodologies of sustaining a belief system like a religion are very, very different from the methodologies of sustaining a belief system like science, because science does its best as it can, reducing cognitive biases, demanding reproducibility, confirmability, publicity, reliability, control, and so forth and so on. Now, you can never eliminate confirmation bias, but there's a profound difference between belief systems that pretty much have to take advantage of all our cognitive biases, and belief systems that worry deeply about cognitive biases and do their best to minimize them before judging or reaching conclusions.
May I pick up on that? Continue from where you left off there?
Please do.
Yeah, please.
What you're talking about there is the fact that in science we have very slowly acquired, slowly learned, hard-won institutional practices and principles and methods that rule out or sort of militate against these cognitive biases that we all suffer from. And religion doesn't seem to have much in its sort of methodology, so to speak, to do anything comparable, and exploits the fact that we have these biases. And it's not just religions. All superstitions do this, and I would class most religions as a kind of superstition. But one of the things that I find about this is that our tendency is to want to sort of carve off the idea of the natural and the supernatural. A lot of the discussion earlier had to do with this natural supernatural stuff, and I started off by saying that that I don't know what belongs under the heading of the supernatural, and there's a lot of people who are anxious about the idea of the supernatural and want to rule it out of existence. They want to define it right out of existence. They want to say if something exists or something is real, then it isn't supernatural. That well, one might make a case that anything that exists is natural. That is, on the grounds that the phenomena that are available to us are all natural, and the supernatural phenomena are rather elusive. And anyone who wants to declare something to be supernatural have a hard wrote a hoe to show that it is in fact supernatural and not merely unexplained or something like that, or non-existent. And my feeling has always been we don't need to ever sort of go down the road of trying to define the supernatural out of existence. We can have a placeholder called supernatural, and then it's an open question, what, if anything, falls under that heading? It's a sort of an ontological category that you can shove things into as a placeholder, but whether or not anyone wants to agree that anything properly belongs under that heading, that is a question of put up or shut up. And it's going to be very hard to do that because all of the methods that we have ever come up with to generate any kind of intersubjective agreement or objectivity are things like the methods of the sciences. We just don't have any. There's no methodology within religions or superstitions that would allow us to identify a class of phenomena that are not natural. And so I don't think that there's a need to rule out the supernatural on philosophical grounds. I describe myself as a methodological naturalist. I am not a metaphysical. Oh, good. I'm not a metaphysical or philosophical naturalist. I utterly reject that. I will never call myself that unless I have a really strong argument to the contrary, because I don't even need to. I don't need to go as far as declaring that it could be out and fall into some trap of you've ruled out a whole category of possible existing things on some philosophical out of some philosophical prejudice. I don't need to go anywhere near there. What I need are the examples of phenomena that we have good reasons to think are not natural. You can call them supernatural. You can call them paranormal. Call them the super duper natural. I don't really care so much what we call them as long as we can
super duper
establish
natural.
that they're there. And
I'm using that forever.
Well, that's sort of yeah. I've been using that example for a long time. It's rather facetiously. Whenever someone tries to say that something's supernatural, I'll sometimes say, "Oh, well, now let me introduce another category called the super duper natural." And we can multiply placeholder ontological categories as much as we like, and we don't have to rule any of them out. We just have to say, listen, we believe anything on insufficient evidence, so what do we have sufficient evidence to think exists? And in the case of the supernatural, I don't think we have any examples. We have all these canonical cases of natural phenomena like people and cars and atoms and galaxies and you name it. But where are the canonical, the established instances of supernatural phenomena that are in fact established, that we know exist and are not merely declared to be supernatural? That's what I think is missing here, and that's why I don't think anyone needs to sort of worry about ruling the supernatural out before we even start investigating anything. And so I'm completely open to the prospect of ghosts and ESP and gods. Reality can be stiff with gods for all we know. I won't rule them out, but I'm just going to say, give me the reasons for thinking that they're there. Sorry, that was long.
Well said, though.
Yeah, nice and articulate. I have no problem with no problem with long answers, so long as they make sense. Did you hear that, Alex?
Ouch, Chris. What
A little
the hell?
harsh.
Wow. Yeah, it was a little harsh, man. It's going to scare everybody out of the room, you know.
God, I'm wishing for. Let's pray for a nut allergy.
Totally busting chops. I only do it because I love you.
I'm sensitive, Chris.
You're not sensitive. You're not that sensitive. So, well, it has come to be around that time. And on that horrible bashing of Alex, I'm going to bring this discussion to a close. And unless there are other things that people would like to bring up. Bueller.
Well, I have more thoughts, but I think I've had enough to say.
Okay.
Save them for another day, maybe.
Yes, with that in mind, I'm going to close up the conversation. I would like to remind everybody that we have a packed schedule this coming Sunday. We have on the place not only Steve Shives, but also Michael Dowd. We have John Shook, who is on the show right now, starting his show 1 week from tonight. We still have yet to come up with a name. Maybe we can have people who are watching suggest names on the Cult of Honesty page.
Please.
And we'll have like a lottery. And they will win, like, an autographed index card that we can mail them.
I already know what the name's going to be.
Special prize if you can include the word humanist
Oh.
Yes.
or agriculture in the title. I like the word agriculture. I don't know why, it just rolls off the tongue in an annoying way.
I think it should be called the Hootenanny Jamboree, personally. So I'm going to push for that. So anyone in favor of Hootenanny Jamboree, vote for that. I'll be posting it on the Cult of Honesty Facebook page. And there's also going to be a lot of other really awesome stuff. G-Man, who is normally on this show, is going to be on my Meeting of the Minds show this coming Sunday. And everybody have a great night. I will talk to you all later, going off the air in 3, 2, 1.
Good night.